beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
No. I am your father.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
You're listening to After the Ending, the only film podcast where we tell you what happens after the ending of your favorite films. And now, here are your hosts, Mike Spring and Phil Edwards.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2023. We are After the Ending. Welcome, everybody. I'm Mike Spring.
And I'm Phil Edwards.
And yes, it's another year. This is our first episode of 2023. Not our first episode ever, though. We've done a lot of them now. What year are we in, Phil? You remember what year we started? 2016?
2016 or 2017. I lose track of time. The whole pandemic made me go, what year is this?
Yeah. And we lost like a year to the pandemic, too, I think. But yeah, we started back in like 2017, maybe. That sounds about right. So what, 6 years now? We're going to our 6th year. So Welcome to everybody, whether you're a new viewer or listener or a returning listener or viewer. We are happy to have you here. And it's a big episode tonight. It's a special episode tonight, right? Because as we know, Phil, right, we're the most unpredictable show on the internet.
That's right. So to be totally unpredictable, we're going to do our top 10 films of 2022.
Right. Something you never see, a film podcast doing their top 10 films of the year. I mean, who saw that coming? I dare say no one.
Yeah. If there's a bandwagon, it's got ahead of us and we're just trying to catch up with it.
That's right. But you're right, Phil. It is our top 10 episodes of 2022. This is a special episode. We usually do one of our typical After the Endings, hence the name of the show. But tonight, because it's so big, we got 20 films to get through, theoretically, or 10 each, but there could be some overlap. But because of that, we're going to just focus on that. It's one of our special episodes of the year where we don't do an ending, but we have a lot of fun because we get to talk about contemporary films, current films, in the past year. And we usually, with our endings, we try not to do films that have come out in less than the past 5 years because we want to give people a chance to see them before we spoil the endings of them. So it's always nice when we get a chance to kind of break out of that format a little bit, talk about films from the last year. So I'm very excited for us to share our lists.
Me too. And who knows, maybe some of the films on our lists will end up going after the ending in a few years' time. Who knows?
That's right. And maybe they'll end up on your lists. Maybe you will have seen some of these and you'll say, hey, I also love that film. Or maybe you'll say, I haven't seen that film yet, but I think I'm going to watch it. And then you'll watch it and you'll go, you know what? That was one of my top 10 films of 2022, now that you mention it.
And I'm glad you did mention that, Mike, because that's a good point, a good moment for me to say, if you're watching this live on Facebook or YouTube, you can leave a comment underneath the video or above it, however it shows on your app, player, whatever. But you can comment on whether you agree with us or what you thought of the films you mentioned. You can also list your films as we mention them, go 10, 9. You can do that as well if you want. And we can throw them up on screen and comment on them as well. And either it just might add a few more films and who knows, but join the conversation if you can. And if you leave a comment when this has been posted after we finished, we'll still see it and we can still comment on those things. But
would love to see some of your guys' top 10 lists. So please feel free to share them in the comments live or after the fact. And we'll see what everybody else is feeling this year, what their pulse on the movie scene was in 2022. So that's our episode tonight. It's going to be fun. It's going to be big. It's going to be exciting. And it will be unpredictable because that is us. We are the most unpredictable show on the internet. You remember back in the old days, Phil, we used to have all these catchphrases and we were like, somebody should make t-shirts out of these, like try the fish and all that stuff. I want somebody to make a t-shirt, after the ending t-shirt that says the most, the most unpredictable show on the internet. See, look, if I choke to death live on the air, that would be unpredictable, right? I mean, there's no two ways about that.
The thing is, in rehearsal, Mike, you did choke to death, but luckily you had an EMT there to come and help you.
Right.
So
I'm trying to find the mute button. Hang on a second.
Joking aside, long-term viewers and listeners will know that we do not rehearse in the slightest. Neither of us know ahead of time what the other one person's list is, so it's going to be a surprise for both of us. So if there's any overlap, especially if it's in the same spot on the list, that's always a nice surprise. But it's nice. We like to keep things fresh and groovy. Oh no, I said groovy in an unironic way. I apologize.
It's all right.
But yeah, so we're going to be doing 10 films that came out in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you think of the films in 2022, Mike?
You know, I thought it was a really strong year, actually. Especially when I went back and looked at my list. And I put together, like kind of like my short list, right? And of all the films that I thought could be in my top 10. And I think I had like 15 or 20 films, and that's pretty solid because there was a few years when we were doing the top 10 of every year in Hollywood. There's a couple years where I struggled to even find 10 movies I liked that much. Not many, admittedly, but there was a couple. And I thought the fact that there was, if there was 15 or 20 that I considered for my top 10, that means there was a significant number more that I still enjoyed, right? That just didn't make my top 10 or were a consideration for it. So I thought that means, as a whole, it was a really strong year. How about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. I managed to see an awful lot of films from the year, which was great. And there was a lot of really good ones. It was hard to do this list, which was quite nice because as you've said, in previous years, I've often been stuck with just a few I have seen, or there haven't been that many. But this one, the list changed as the year went on. Lots of really good horror films as well, which was nice.
Right.
But yeah, I quite like the list I've got. I think I still stand by it because it's too late to change. But
right.
As always, though, there's still a few films which I didn't see in the year, which I would have liked to, whether it's because I just didn't get a chance to see them or they haven't yet come out in the UK.
Right. There's always a couple of those last minute, the year-end films, the award contenders that I always feel a little guilty that they put out these big movies at the end of the year, and sometimes I just can't get to them, and they probably would have been on my list if I could have gotten to them, but we also don't want to wait until like mid-February to do this episode when nobody cares anymore. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 there. But I got to see a few towards the end of the year that I was happy to see enough to decide if they were good for consideration or not. I'm also pretty happy with my list. A quick note for longtime viewers: it looks like I don't have any hair. And if you're listening to the podcast, don't worry, it's an optical illusion. But I do have hair. I just had to move rooms tonight because I was having some internet issues. So now I'm in one of my downstairs rooms where the wall color matches my hair quite significantly. So if my head looks oddly shaped and slightly lopsided and like I shaved it, it's not. It's just there you go. See. So I'm very self-conscious about stupid things, but that's one of them. So, all right. So shall we get into the list, Phil? We've been keeping people waiting long enough. Shall we dive into the films?
Let's get to it. And if any of you are going to leave comments, get your list ready as well and get ready to type.
Right.
Because
that's right. We're
going to be going through this right now.
All right. Well, sir, would you like to start today or would you like me to start? You tell me. I will start the list this time. Okay. All right. That sounds good. I like it, Phil. Take the reins.
Okay, here we go. Top 10 films of 2022. My number 10 is one called Amsterdam, directed by David O. Russell. I would list the whole cast, but it's ridiculous. But the main cast: Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, and Anya Taylor-Joy, Mike Myers, Robert De Niro, and lots of other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those ones. David O. Russell does these films on occasion where he just gets loads of famous people, throws them all in, and sees what happens. I know lots of people didn't quite like this film or didn't quite hit. It's a long film. It's all about three friends who've been in the World War I, and they all end up going to Amsterdam for this wonderful bohemian lifestyle. But then a couple of them return back to New York, where they are doctors and lawyers, and they get involved in some kind of weird plot or conspiracy in 1933. It's all based on some real events which did happen. I won't go into the plot in too much detail because I don't want to spoil it to you. But I can see why some people didn't like it. It's a long and winding road to get to the end. The conspiracy itself is a slow reveal, but I just really liked all the characters involved. It was all a bit quirky, a bit funny. I like the interactions with them. The dialogue is nice and snappy as it usually is when it's set in the 30s. I thought it looked gorgeous as well. The mise-en-scene and the street work, although probably lots of it is now CGI, but I like it when it's a historical city. We see New York City back in the past. That's all really great. I thought Christian Bale was the MVP of the film with his eye prosthetic and just the way he's acting, and he's always trying out drugs on himself. Just made me laugh. I found it funny. I found it charming, and I just really like the way all the different characters came in and out and then turned up at later dates. I like Mike Myers and Michael Shannon's two characters, things like that. And I like the way it all wrapped up. It was it was just a lot of fun. And I didn't mind the fact it took its time and we spent time with different characters telling different things. But that's my number 10. It's Amsterdam.
All right, very good pick. Now, I will say this. I saw Amsterdam. I did not put it on my list. But Phil, do you think I liked it or do you think I didn't like it? Because I feel like this is one of those films that you probably could imagine I could go either way on. So what do you think?
I'm trying to think your previous ones with David O. Russell. I think you kind of liked it, but probably thought it was too long.
Yeah, you know me well. I did actually like it. I liked it more than I expected to. I don't always love David O. Russell films. I like some of them quite a bit. Some of them I really don't like at all. I very hit or miss with him. I really didn't like American Hustle. But Silver Linings Playbook is good, but I enjoyed Amsterdam. My big problem with it wasn't so much it was too long, as I thought there was a little too much David O. Russell-isms in that I thought it was a little, he likes to make things a little quirky for quirkiness sake, which is not an aesthetic I care for. And there's some parts, like the part with like his war injuries was surprisingly graphic, and I felt like that was unnecessary. And like even the whole thing with his eyeball continually popping out, like it didn't further along the film in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? It didn't help develop the character. It didn't develop the film. It was just, I'm going to throw this kind of weird thing in so that once in a while we can make it happen and it's quirky and blah, blah, blah. But it didn't help the movie for a movie that was long, right? So I think if you could have just taken out some of that stuff, I would have liked it a lot more. I did find the story surprisingly engaging. I thought all the cast was great. So I did like it, actually, but didn't make my list.
Yeah, no problem. But I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. All right. My number 10 is a surprise to me. And what I mean by that is this. When I was doing my list, I got to the number 10 spot. I had 7 or 8 movies left on my list, and I was surprised that this was the one I picked. But I did. And I guess that tells you something about it. It is Father Stu, starring Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson and Jackie Weaver, written and directed by Rosalind Ross. It was not a particularly big release, but it's a heck of a good film, largely in part to Mark Wahlberg's performance, which is phenomenal. And I guess the Oscars haven't been announced yet. I would like to see him get nominated for an Oscar for it. I don't know if he will or not, but he's utterly fantastic. So basically, it's kind of like a biopic. It is based on a real story. It's about this guy who is the classic definition of what you would call a ne'er-do-well. Just this, kind of low rent guy, kind of like, scamming his way through life and, barely getting by, and he meets this woman who's very, very Catholic, I believe, very religious. And so he sort of decides to it starts off almost more of like a scam, right? Like he's gonna pretend to be religious, but then he actually sort of does become religious. And so he actually enters or tries to enter the priesthood. But of course they fight him because he's like this, kind of nobody, like nobody thinks he's taking it seriously. They don't take him seriously. And so he kind of has to fight his way into the seminary. And it's interesting because it's hard to explain. I don't consider it a religious film like you think of your typical like faith-based films. It's not about like trying to convince you to be religious or like, God is great or all of that stuff. It's about this guy who developed a faith and then had to fight against a lot of things to take it to the level he wanted to take it to. So like I'm not a religious person, but I actually found this film to be really, really good. The Father Stu character is very charming. Mark Wahlberg's performance is phenomenal. I mean, just incredible. It starts off kind of like, this is Mark Wahlberg doing what he's done before, and then it transforms, and it's beautiful, and I loved it. But it's so if you're turned off by like stories about the church and stuff like that, don't be, because it's not really about that, even though it's kind of about that. But it's more about the person and his story and things like that. I just thought it was a really entertaining film, which surprised me because that wasn't what I was expecting. But yeah, I loved it. And like I said, I was a little surprised it made my number 10. But when I looked at all the films on the list that I had left, this was the one that I liked the best. So there we go. It's Father Stu, and definitely worth tracking down.
Great. Yeah, I know the film. I saw the trailer, but I haven't had a chance to see it. But it does sound good.
Yeah, I think when you watch it, like I said, you'll like me, if he doesn't get nominated for an Oscar, he's kind of my Jessica Chastain for this year. Like remember last year, I kept saying like if she doesn't get nominated for Eyes of Tammy Faye, like there's something wrong with the system. Well, that's kind of how I feel about Mark Wahlberg with this. The film didn't do well enough, so I'm afraid it'll get ignored. But if he doesn't get nominated, it'll be a crime.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'll check that out. Well, my number 9 is a film I think you won't have enjoyed if you did see it. Just going by the previous films that the guys made, but it is The Northman, directed by Robert Eggers, starring. It's based on the legend of Hamlet, who Shakespeare then based Prince Hamlet on. But the film stars Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Anya Taylor-Joy again. She pops up a lot this year.
Yeah,
Claes Bang, Ethan Hawke, Bjork, Willem Dafoe, and it's basically about a young Viking prince whose father is killed by his uncle. Sorry, the father's brother kills him. And then the little boy vows revenge. And then through the wonders of a smash cut, we see him turn into the big hulking bruiser of Alexander Skarsgård, who's become a berserker warrior. You have this cool battle as they assault this village. And as it goes on, he realizes he gets some clues as to where his uncle is, and he tracks him down and meets up with a woman who could be a witch or might not be. And there's lots of weird visions. There's I felt it was like Hamlet meets Skyrim, the video game, meets Conan the Barbarian, the movie, because it's just, I mean, it's in a good way, but it's got that Conan the Barbarian ponderous inevitability about it, where you're just following this hulking brute of a guy who's got a mission he wants to do. He doesn't say much, but he will kill anybody in the way he does it. And like Conan the Barbarian, it's even got a bit where the main character goes down into a cave or an old building anyway, and gets a sword off a skeleton warrior. But I really liked that. I love the whole atmosphere of it. I love the mythic quality of it. I like the characters. I like the way the main character as well as stabbing people and brutally killing them. He also uses trickery and things to undermine the evil uncle, who may not have been as evil as we thought when you hear other things about the main character's father. But I really like that. I do like Robert Eggers films. I feel this could probably be the most accessible for a casual viewer because it's a revenge story. But everybody involved did a real good job. All the blokes in there really must have worked the hell out because the muscles are just. Anyway, it's just crazy how, if you want to be in a film, you've got to be ultra fit, and this is one of them. But I really liked it. Looked great. And that's my number 9.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to keep playing this game as long as you keep giving me films that didn't make my list, but that I saw. So what do you think? Did I like The Northman or not?
Going from your previous opinions on Robert Eggers films, I'm going to say you might have enjoyed it maybe on a technical level, but you didn't enjoy the actual film itself.
You would be correct. I friggin' hated it. I do not understand him. Here's what you nailed it surprisingly well. It's a beautiful film. I mean, there is some imagery in the film that is really phenomenal. The cinematography is amazing. The special effects look great. I mean, like from a purely visual standpoint, it is beautiful. But I hated every minute of it. I hated every character in that film. There isn't a single character to like in that movie. You want? Wait, I want to see a quick impression. We haven't done any impressions in a while.
Okay.
Okay. I'm the editor of The Northman. Okay. Here we go. 7 minutes of film time, and we haven't had a beheading. Hang on. Okay, there's one. Oh, you know what? Now that we've beheaded like 37 people, why don't we behead a horse? Yes, perfect. I got it. I swear to God, it was like every time I turned around, somebody was getting beheaded in that movie. And fine, whatever. I can handle a beheading, but it was just like, oh, could we knock it off with the beheadings already? And then it's like, oh, wait, wasn't enough to behead a person. Let's behead a horse. I think they beheaded 2 horses. I was like, seriously, like,
yeah,
get over it with the beheadings. I did not enjoy it at all. Not surprised it's on your list. That doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. But not.
It does seem to, when I posted it on the Live for Films Facebook page that I watched it, it did seem to be, people either seem to love it and people seem to just dislike it intensely.
Here's what I'll say. It's my favorite of the Robert Eggers films so far. That tells you anything about what I think about his movies.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, it's the most accessible story-wise as well.
God, brutal. Not
But
my.
if you're
Not
looking to get into Robert Eggers, you've heard good things about, and this could be a good one to start with. The
yes,
Northman.
or if you just need some more beheadings in your life, then I definitely recommend The
Yeah.
Northman. Okay, well, my number 9, a very similar movie. Actually, probably more similar than I'd want to admit, but the title actually is almost exactly the same. It is not The Northman, it is The Batman, or The Batman, as you would pronounce it. But yeah, not Robert Eggers, but instead Robert Pattinson playing the Batman. This is the Matt Reeves, of course, 3-hour-long Batman movie that was a pretty massive hit early on in 2022. And, you know, I did not have high expectations for this film. I had even less high expectations for it when I found out it was 3 hours long, as I don't think many movies need to be 3 hours long. I was never worried about Robert Pattinson. I've been a supporter of his for a long time, and I knew he would do good, and he did great. But I ended up really liking the movie. It's got some flaws for sure, but it actually, the running length isn't really one of them. I think it fairly well earned its running length. There's some really great sequences in it. I like what they did with the score. The music of the film is amazing. The performances are great. I mean, Colin Farrell is amazing as the Penguin. You know, the action scenes are terrific. It's got enough flaws to it for me that's why it came in as number 9. We'll find out, of course, as we go. I can't tell if it's a movie that you liked that didn't make your list, or if it's a movie that ended up on your list, even maybe higher than mine. But I feel like that was a pretty good place for it. I liked it a lot. Not perfect. And there was other movies I think I enjoyed more. But there's no denying that The Batman was really cool. It's a good movie. I like that they played into the detective aspect of Batman. And it wasn't just all action, but it had enough action to not be boring. So, yeah, that's my number 9, The Batman.
Okay, I saw that film. I enjoyed it, and we may be revisiting it later.
Okay, I had a feeling we would, but I wasn't sure. So,
good pick. Okay, my number 8. We're going to go into the multiverse for this one, and for some high action, some mysticism, some strangeness, some weirdness. It is, of course, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
You threw me off there. I admit I fell for it, Phil. I thought you were going Doctor Strange, and you threw me off. So nicely done.
Thank you. No, Everything Everywhere All at Once, directed by the Daniels, as they're collectively known, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. Apologies if I didn't pronounce that right. It's the one that features Michelle Yeoh as a Chinese-American immigrant who's running a laundrette with her husband, and she's sorting out the taxes with Jamie Lee Curtis, where it is then revealed by an alternate version of her husband that Michelle Yeoh's character is part of us, involved in a multiverse, and there's a being within the multiverse who's coming to destroy everything. And I won't tell you much more because I don't want to spoil it, but also because it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
But it's very inventive. I feel it did the whole multiverse better than Doctor Strange into the matters of the multiverse, mainly because we actually got to see lots of bits of the multiverse instead of just one or two things, and we spent time in some of them. I mean, it's got some things I like the fact one of the multiverses is where the main character is basically Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah,
she's a big action star, but she's at a big premiere of a film. There's another one where she's just a rock with googly eyes.
Yeah.
There's the hot dog fingers. Alan, who writes for Lifford Films as well, did a video chat with the directors and Jamie Lee Curtis, and they were talking about the hot dog fingers, which was good. But that's good. But I just like the inventiveness of it. It was just a lot of fun. It's all about family and love, and about missed opportunities, dreams you may have had, family. I said already. It's a weird comedy. It's got some great action scenes. It's got a bit of everything. With the bad guy or the villain or whatever you want to call them, when they do that and the twisting and the way that's edited, as well as some lovely editing and in-camera effects. It's great. If you haven't seen it, it's maybe a little bit too long. You probably could have shaved off 10 or 15 minutes, but on the whole, I really enjoyed it. But that's Everything Everywhere All at Once, my number 8. Which was a big hit for A24, a studio I generally loathe. But this was one of their highest grossing film to date, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, and you wouldn't think it was an A24 film, to be honest, from the other one, right? Yeah, well, because it's not made like every other A24 film, which comes right out of the A24 playbook and does everything exactly the same. Yeah, it was A24's first film to cross the $100 million mark. Yeah, and surpassed Hereditary, which was its highest grossing film before them.
All right. Well, Phil, you are just setting this up perfectly. I have seen Everything Everywhere All at Once. It did not make my list. So, what is your prediction?
I didn't know we were going to be having this game.
I didn't
I-
either, but you keep setting me up, so I can't not knock him down. You know what I'm saying? It's the
I-
most unpredictable show on the internet, Phil.
It is. I think you enjoyed parts of it. I think you probably enjoyed the idea of it, but you probably thought it was a bit too long.
Okay. You're close, but not entirely. I actually liked it quite a bit.
Okay.
It was in my short list. It was in those movies, those 7 or 8 movies I had left for number 10, and it could have easily replaced Father Stew.
Yeah.
But the thing for me, so there's my two biggest takeaways from Everything Everywhere All at Once, and they're kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum. One of them, there were definitely parts while I was watching the movie where I was like, do I like this movie? Am I enjoying this? And for the most part, I did enjoy it, but yeah, it was definitely a little bit too long. But here's what I will say. I also think the ending of that movie is one of the most beautiful movie endings I've ever seen. I don't want to spoil anything, but it brought tears to my eyes. And I thought it was because they set everything up for so long in a certain way, you know, emotionally. And then when it comes back around to kind of where I think most people want it to, it was done so well and so beautifully. And I think it just nicely reinforces this idea of family. And I thought the ending of it especially really elevated it. So that's, I again, it was on my short list, didn't quite make the cut, but I actually did enjoy it quite a bit. Has some flaws, but yes, very inventive, very fun, and really enjoyable. And I loved seeing, Kiwi Kwan or what, Short Round from Indiana Jones, back in acting. That was a pleasant surprise, and he was great.
Yeah, totally agree. A great cast, brilliant acting.
For sure.
Check it out if you haven't. I think it's streaming. Lots of these films are streaming on the various platforms. So if you haven't seen it on the big screen, search them out on your streaming platforms, and you'll find most of them. Disney Plus have been getting a load over in the UK, which is great. But Netflix and other ones, there are many streaming things available, and none of them sponsor us. So we're just going to mention them all.
That's right. All right, good choice. Okay, so my number 8 is kind of interesting in that, like, so when I watch films, I keep track of them in an app and I rate them with a star rating out of 5 stars. And this is the only film that made my list that came in under 4 stars. I tried to keep it all 4, 4.5, 5-star things. Technically, I rated this one 3.5 stars, but that's because it has some flaws that detract from it. But I still think it's a really awesome film that I love, and I'm not quite sure. Sometimes when I'm rating them, I try to go from like a more overall standpoint. Like, I liked this film, but it's also got critical issues. And sometimes I'm just like, I loved it, 5 stars. Who knows? So it's not a perfect system, but it is Baz Luhrmann's Elvis.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I really did enjoy it. It's 20 minutes too long, and it focuses a little too much on Colonel Tom. But when you get past the first 10, 15 minutes of the film and some parts in the middle, it is just a raucous, exciting, energetic, musical bonanza. Of course, it's all great Elvis songs, so the music is amazing, but it's all been remixed in that Baz Luhrmann style. The film is just super flashy, but in a good way. And I think, again, to jump on my Oscar bandwagon, if Austin Butler doesn't get nominated for his performance as Elvis, then we should just throw the Oscars away. He is just incredible. And I mean, not just like, I think anybody can do a quick Elvis impersonation, right? Everybody can be like, right. It's not that hard. But and I've watched a lot of Elvis movies in the past year, because this movie really got me into the idea of Elvis as a performer, which in a way I never have before. And I've really come to appreciate him as a musician. But if you watch Austin Butler's performance, the physicality of it and how much his movements mirror Elvis's movements, it is one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. Like, every single thing he does is note perfect, authentic to what Elvis did. The way he shakes the hips and he jumps up on his toes and does his arms, even the fat Elvis stuff versus the skinny Elvis stuff. It's incredible. And I've become a fan over the last decade or so of physical performances when people kind of can transform their body. I've mentioned this on the show before. It super impresses me. And I just cannot get over how physically he manages to capture Elvis. It's one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen, in my opinion. So if he doesn't get nominated again, we just burn it all down and start over. But the film has some flaws. Like I said, it's not a perfect movie. It's definitely a little bit too long. But man, it's fun to watch, and the music is great, and Austin Butler's amazing. So Elvis is my number 8.
Good pick. That's one of the films of 2022 I have not had a chance to see yet, which I'm excited about. I think it might have made my list. I've seen some videos though showing Austin Butler's performance with Elvis from the same concerts and
Yeah,
things, and
yeah.
it's really good.
Uncanny.
What gets me though is we met Austin Butler back in
Yes,
New
that's
York
right.
Comic Con when he was doing the Shannara series,
Yep.
and he was such a nice guy, but he was so quiet and just thoughtful.
Yeah.
I think he puts a lot of thought into his work, but I never would have picked him to play Elvis, but the
No.
bits I've seen of him, it just looks incredible.
It really is. Yeah, I shared that photo again after I saw Elvis. I was like, wait a minute, that's Austin Butler. I'm like, we met him. So I'll try to remember later to put it on the After the Ending social media channels. So if anybody wants to see, I got a nice picture of me and Austin Butler looking nothing like Elvis, but it is him. So very cool. Well, you should definitely. I think you'll enjoy it when you see it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Okay. Well, my number 7 is a low budget film. It's by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. It is I've got this on Blu-ray. It is Something in the Dirt.
Huh. Okay.
They did films like The Endless and some others which have left my memory at the minute. Oh, Spring, I think was another good one. But this one, they made it during lockdown, and it's basically two guys living in an apartment building in Los Angeles. Yeah, Los Angeles. One of them's just moved in. He's got addiction issues. One of them is involved in this church, but the one who's just moved in, he's got this small apartment where they find a weird object which looks like it's made of crystal in the grounds around the apartment, and strange, weird, supernatural things start happening. So they decide to document that with the camera. They look into the history of the building, and it's mainly just those two because it was shot during lockdown. There's a great documentary showing how they made it, but it's mainly just those two guys talking about what's going on. Is it supernatural? Is it just a weird scientific phenomena which can be identified if they knew more about it? But we learn a lot about the two characters that they're playing, their relationship, how some weird events can bring two opposites together. It's really well acted. It's really well made, but it is just two guys in a flat for lots of it. But we get to see lots of LA. There's some great bits on the rooftop where they got the magic hour sunlight coming in. There's some bits on the beach, and you're just there trying to figure out with them what's going on. And I just love that. I just loved it. It's a weird little film. There's a great the behind the scenes documentary. They started making films with their friends, and they got lucky enough to be able to make some other feature films, but they still want to make films with their friends. And they said this was good because they've got people they know making the little, making all the props for it. Some people doing the special effects. It seems like a very lovely little community they've got, but they're two people who love films, and you can tell that in everything they make. You may not enjoy all the things they do because they can be a little bit weird, but it's made by people who love films, and I just really loved it. But it's Something in the Dirt, and that's my number 7.
Very good, interesting choice. I have not seen this one, so we cannot continue our game just yet. But I have seen The Endless and Spring, and so I'm going to say that it probably wouldn't be my cup of tea based on what you said about it. I think both The Endless and Spring were movies that I considered cool concepts that fell flat or fell short in the end. They weren't terrible. I didn't hate them, but I didn't really like them either.
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I felt this one was a bit tighter.
Right.
It's a short film as well, but yeah.
All right. Well, if it comes across my desk, I'll certainly give it a try, but not one I have seen yet. So
it's a good one to watch for anybody out there who's thinking about. I wouldn't mind having a go at making a film because it shows what you can do with limited budgets and limited surroundings and things like that.
Right.
That's cool. It might inspire some people.
I can respect that. Yeah. Okay, so my number, where are we at? Number 7, right?
Yeah.
My number 7. Well, it's interesting because we both got to this point and kind of went with the movies that other people probably haven't heard of. My number 7 is a movie called Fall. And
another one. I've not seen this one.
Yeah, it stars Grace Carolyn Curry and Virginia Gardner. Virginia Gardner, who I actually interviewed at New York Comic Con a couple years ago, did not get a picture with her, unfortunately, which makes me very sad because she's gorgeous. But so Fall is just an incredible little. I guess it's an independent film. I mean, I think it came out on Lionsgate, but basically what it is, it's kind of along the lines of like The Descent and 47 Meters Deep, but slightly less creature based. It's two girls, women, who climb to the top of this abandoned radio tower. It's like 2,000 feet up in the middle of the desert, as like an extreme kind of thing, right? We climb up there and, we make our mark and say we did it, and then we can climb down. Except, of course, things go wrong. The rusted ladder breaks off, and they find themselves trapped 2,000 feet up in the middle of the desert with nobody around. Now, what I loved about this film, there's a couple of things. First of all, both the actresses in it are fantastic. They do a great job. Their fear is palpable. And I think part of that is because of the way they filmed it. And so here's the thing about it. They're 2,000 feet up in the air on this little platform that's about the size of, like, I don't know, a sewer cover, a manhole cover, right?
Yeah.
And I swear there is almost no CGI in this film, right? And you're watching this film and it looks like they are 2,000 feet up the entire time. And it is terrifying. I mean, I was like sweating watching this movie because it's so realistic looking. And that's hard to pull off. And this isn't really a spoiler because behind the scenes stuff, what I found, I watched the making of documentary. They built like 100-foot tower, but they built it like on the top of like a mesa, like a flat little butte. So that when they shoot from it, right, they're up on top of this tower, and because this mesa is like 2,000 feet up, right, or however many feet up it was, the angle shows them, and it's like you can see like all of Arizona behind them, and it looks like they're up in the middle of the sky, because in effect they are, right? They're just only 100 feet from the ground that they're on, but they're also up in the middle of it. It's amazing. And
that's the same thing they did with Harold Lloyd did that. The classic Harold Lloyd thing where he's hanging off the clock. Yeah, that's the same thing. They had that set but built high up on something else. That's why it looked like you're really high up.
Yeah. Wow. So it's really tense. I mean, one of the most tense films I've watched in a long time. Like, I had no fingernails left when it was over. And it's well written, so you don't devolve into them being like stupid or whatever. There's definitely a healthy suspension of disbelief in a few places, and the one of the major events in the ending definitely feels like it was borrowed from another film. I don't want to say which one. I don't want to spoil anything. But that said, man, I was riveted. I was glued to the screen. I was sweating watching it. And it is one of the best looking films for a low budget film. I'm telling you, you're going to watch this and you are going to think these girls are really up at the top of this tower, and it will blow you away. It's called Fall, and it is directed by somebody named Scott Mann. And if you can track it down, it is out on Blu-ray and digital, and I'm sure it's streaming somewhere, or you have to rent it or something. But if you can track it down and you want a really good thriller, highly recommend Fall. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember watching the trailer for that and going, "Oh my, that's it."
Yeah, I'm telling you, and imagine that times like 100, and you got the whole movie.
Cool. Okay, I will get to watch that one, but it's I'm okay with heights unless it's like a real big tower in the middle of nowhere. But
that's the thing. Yeah, like I think you can watch, even if you're afraid of heights. Like, I mean, maybe if you're afraid of heights, don't watch it. But like, I'm not like afraid of heights, but I'm not like not afraid of heights. And so like, I was okay watching it, but I was definitely like, I mean, I was really like nervous the whole time. I mean, it was a really visceral experience, but I loved it.
Cool. I will definitely check that out when I get a chance.
For sure.
Okay. Well, my number 6, where are we? Yes, my number 6 is by Martin McDonagh. It is The Banshees of Inisherin, starring Colin Farrell and Brandon Gleeson as two lifelong friends living on an island off the coast of Ireland who meet up, have drinks, play music, and it's a very small community, very quiet. But then one day, Brendan Gleeson's character doesn't want to go to the pub with Colin Farrell's character, and Colin Farrell is just basically going, why don't you want to? Are we not friends? Until Brandon Gleeson goes, yeah, I find you're really dull. This isn't spoilers, it's just the setup of the film. He goes, I find you really dull. I want to look at my music and don't talk to me anymore. And you can just feel the bewilderment of Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell is brilliant in this. He's such a good actor.
Yeah.
And Brendan Gleeson as well. But you're there because at the start you're there with Colin Farrell going, but why doesn't he want to talk to him? This doesn't make any sense. Just sit down. I spent most of the film just going, just sit down and talk to him. Just have a pint and go, listen, just take some time. I just want to take some time away to focus on the music and do this. And then when it just keeps escalating. And then also Brandon Gleeson's character doesn't help things because he keeps sort of helping him and being involved in it. And it's like mixed signals. And then Brendan Gleeson says he's going to do something if he keeps talking to him, and it just escalates and gets more and more. There's obvious parallels with the Civil War. I saw a YouTuber, an Irish guy, talking about the film, and he was talking about the Irish Civil War. He learned about it in school, but he said it was just. He said even though he knows what it involved, he says it's really hard to explain the way two sides kept going against each other and making deals and not making deals. It seems very much the characters in this are very much in keeping with that. And then the second half of the film, it just gets darker. It does have some very funny moments, but it just gets darker and almost like a ghost story the way it's filmed as well, especially with the older woman who's looked like a literal banshee as she's just haunting the landscape. But I just thought this was. I will admit, when I was watching it and then I found out when Brendan Gleeson says what he's going to do to himself, and then he starts doing that, I was going, oh, I don't know if I like this. It is quite slow and whimsical to begin with, and as things goes on. And as I said, I spent a lot of time going, just talk to each other. This is ridiculous. Just talk, explain it, and then go your separate ways. But it stayed with me afterwards, and I kept thinking about it, and I just kept thinking how much I did enjoy it. And I look forward to going back to it at some point. I'm watching it again, but it looks gorgeous. It makes me not want to live on a very small island though, because there's barely anybody around. That would be nice for a while, but not too long. But it's my number 6, The Banshees of Inisherin.
Very good pick. Well, after a brief hiatus, we are returning to the riveting game show known as Phil Predicts Mike's Opinions. So, Phil, I have seen The Banshees of Inisherin, and it did not make my list. So, what do you think? Did I like it or not?
I can't remember what you thought of In Bruges, because all involved were in that as well. Martin McDonagh made that.
Right.
I'm going to say you enjoyed it, but no, I'm going to say you enjoyed it and just leave it at that.
Okay. So here's what I think of Banshees of Inisherin. There's no way on earth it should work as well as it does.
Yes.
It's not a film about a lot, and it has a really small cast and a small group of characters, and it's kind of slow moving and not much happens in it. And yet I really enjoyed it. Stopped short of making my list just because for whatever reason, it was a good movie. I liked it a lot. Just didn't feel like it was in my top 10. But yeah, I thought Colin Farrell is phenomenal in it for sure. Carrie Condon is great, but Brendan Gleeson is great. And the writing is just so good that it's like one of those, it's like you're kind of riveted watching this film, even though not much is happening, It's a strange one for sure. But I did like it quite a bit. And we do have a viewer comment, just a quick one from our friend Jay, friend of the show, Jay. He says, that's my favorite game show, talking about Phil Predicts Mike's Opinion. So I'm glad that you're here to catch it, Jay. We aim to please. So
yeah, it's been happening quite a bit. Will it happen anymore? But yeah, I know what you mean. It shouldn't work, but I think it's because it's a good filmmaker with some brilliant actors and a great script.
Right.
It comes together really well. I wouldn't be surprised if Colin Farrell is nominated.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a film that can probably get a good number of Oscar nominations. Yeah, it just seems like the kind of thing the Academy tends to like. But and also, you probably don't remember what I think of In Bruges, because for many years I hadn't seen it. It was one of those films that I knew you were a big fan of, and I had just never gotten around to. I did finally watch it a couple of years ago, and I do like it quite a bit. So we have another comment here about our game show from one of our regular viewers, Richard Brown, saying, quoting Phil, "I don't want to predict your opinion no more." Well, too bad. You're gonna keep it up, Phil, as long as you keep putting movies on the list that I've seen but did not make my list. So now we're getting to our top half of the list. So that might change, right? Because maybe I've seen more of them, or maybe they made my list. Although I honestly think that we're not going to have too much overlap this year. I'm looking at my next few choices, and I'll be surprised if more than 2 of my next 6 ended up on your list. So
yeah, but as a reminder though, for people watching live, if you want to let us know what your 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 films of 2022 have been, put them in the comments and we can put them up.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I won't keep you in suspense any longer then. My number 6 is, and I'm going to call it by its real name, not the name the studio used. It is Scream 5. Or as it's known by the studio, Scream. But that's stupid. I hate when they do that. Don't name the same thing as another movie that you already made. It's Scream 5. It would be different if they were rebooting it completely, but they're not. It's got characters from the original films in it. But anyway, that's just my annoyance at the name of it. However, I'm a huge fan of the Scream franchise. I have been for a long time, ever since the first movie came out. I love every single film in the franchise. It's one of my favorites. And but sequels many years later sometimes suffer a little bit. I thought Scream 4 was pretty good when it came out a few years back. I liked it, but Scream 5 does this great thing, I think. And I know some people criticize it for it, but I think what other people criticize Scream 5 for is what I loved about it. So it's what they call a requel, which is where they like reboot a franchise with new characters, but then bring in some legacy characters to kind of connect it with the older viewers and the newer viewers, right? But what they do is they basically kind of, I guess effectively I can see what people complain. They kind of not remake, but sort of take the formula of Scream 1, the original one, by explaining what a requel is as it's happening in the film, right? And all the rules of a requel. And then they do those things. And it's very meta. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, it's you got all of the classic Scream kind of tropes to it, right? It's got good, fun characters, got great dialogue. You don't know who did it, until the end. So it's a good mystery. It's got some good, slashery kills. It's got some blood, but it's not too gory. I really enjoyed it. And I think if you're a Scream fan, there's a lot to like there. Again, I know some people complain that they've done the same thing too many times and blah, blah, blah. And I guess that's a valid complaint, but I didn't have a problem with it. I really enjoyed it. I loved the new sort of spin on, explaining how this new version of sequels works to an audience that may or may not know that already. And I just had a ton of fun with it. So that is my number 6, Scream 5. And I can't wait for Scream 6 to come out this year. Now I'm excited.
Yeah. Ghostface Takes Manhattan for Scream 6. Isn't it?
Or Ghostface Goes to Hell.
Yeah.
Ghostface is dead. The final Ghostface nightmare. I don't know. That one's a stretch, but yeah.
I've not seen I've not seen Scream 5 yet. I must get around to watching that. I wanted to watch all of the others before I went to see it. But I never got around to it.
Yeah, I want to do that too, and I didn't get to because I'm watching them with my daughter because she's old enough now. So we watched the first one, but it's always slow when I have to involve other people. So I just watched it, but it's great.
Okay, well, we're into the top 5 now. My number 5 is directed by Mark Mylod, and it is The Menu.
Ah, yes.
Which I was one of the ones I watched near the end of the year. It came onto Disney Plus, watched it there. I'd heard good things about it. The trailer, it was called a black comedy horror thriller. It's definitely a comedy. It's more like a twisted comedy. It's about some rich folk, for restaurant critics, actors, various people, only a handful of people invited to a very, very high-end restaurant on an island where a top chef played by Ralph Fiennes runs it, and his staff live on the island as well. It's very the way some top kitchens you see in real life. It's where all the lesser chefs or sous chefs, whatever you call them, they are the chef rules everything. They do whatever he says. But he invites these people there. He has a menu for them, specially prepared. And as it goes on, things get weirder, things get stranger, things get dangerous. It doesn't go. I thought it was going to go one way, but it didn't. Instead, it went another way. But it's basically about the difference between rich people and poor people, or the rich people and people who serve. Well, that's people who serve customers and the customers in general. It's amazing the way it's shot. I really like the way it has the island and the way each course it comes up and shows what it is. It also left me wanting to have a cheeseburger. But it's great performance by Anya Taylor-Joy, who pops up again
once again.
John Leguizamo and lots of other people. A handful of people who you're going, oh, I know that person. I recognize them. But I just thought I won't go into any more details because best to go into it knowing as little as possible if you haven't seen it. But I enjoyed it, the whole setup, the resolution, the various events. And Ralph Fiennes is just when he keeps doing that, clapping his hands, bringing it together. It's very well made, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. It also, I watched it the week before. I was going on to a posh restaurant with a taster menu as well, so that changed my dining experience when I was eating it. I was very appreciative of everything that the staff was doing just to make sure that they had not seen the menu.
Right.
That's my number 5.
Excellent choice. All right. Well, much to our viewers' chagrin or delight, depending on how they feel, Jay will be happy. We're going to play another round of Phil Predicts Mike's Opinion because I have seen the menu, Phil, but it did not make my top 10. So, what do you think?
I think you really enjoyed it, but you wished it had either gone a bit more into the horror elements, maybe, or I don't know, maybe to tie things up a bit better. Because I found the end. There were some points where I kept thinking, "But why are they all doing this?"
Right. Okay.
But
Well,
I kept going. But that's just the way. It's just that's
right.
the way
Right.
the thing is. But I think
Right.
something like that.
Okay, well, I gotta say, you know me well, my friend. You are spot on. I really enjoyed the menu. It is, in fact, one of my honorable mentions, which we're going to
Okay.
share at the end. It was very close to making my top 10. My big problem with it is I don't think it stuck the landing at the end. Like you said, there's some parts where towards the end, and this is spoiler free, but there are some things characters do where I'm like, I'm not sure I buy that these people would all do these things at the, in the very end kind of thing. And it took me out of it just a little bit. Because up until then I thought it was brilliant, and I just thought it was funny but dark and like suspenseful, and I thought, again, Ray Fiennes is terrific. But I just couldn't quite buy the ending, and it lost me just a touch there, and I wish it had, and I wish it had stuck the landing better. But that said, still worth watching, still a very enjoyable film, definitely something different and unique, which I like about it, not like everything, not like other things we've seen before. So that is very close to making my list, but just got edged out. So
that's a good point, because everybody moans about this. So every year there's so many sequels and remakes and comic book movies, but our lists have been, on the whole, I know you mentioned the Batman and things like that. There's been lots. 2022, there were lots of original films, which made it to the cinema and had a big audience. So it's great to see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Okay, what's your number 5 then?
Well, my number 5 is, speaking of all those things you just said, it is now I'm veering into that territory.
Yeah, the last half's got to be like that now, isn't it?
Yeah, it probably. But I'm going to say I don't think a lot of people are going to have this on their top 10 list for 2022, and I don't care because I loved this movie and I thought it was phenomenal, and it is Lightyear.
I didn't get to see this. I haven't watched this yet. Yeah.
Lightyear, of the Buzz Lightyear fame, the Toy Story movie that nobody wanted apparently. But everybody I've talked to saw it, thought it was excellent, and I thought so too. It's the premise is it's the movie that Andy saw in the original Toy Story that made him want the Buzz Lightyear film. And really, that's kind of like, that's cool and all, but you don't even really need it. It's really just a Buzz Lightyear film about kind of the original, the Space Ranger version of Buzz Lightyear. Younger Buzz Lightyear, played by Chris Evans. What it really does well is it's a surprisingly good science fiction story. And I really don't want to get into the story too much because I don't want to spoil anything, because there's a surprising amount of things to be spoiled. But it's a really strong science fiction story. It has ties to the Toy Story films, sort of. But it really does is it paints Buzz as a real character, a flawed character. He is, very he's got a lot of hubris. He doesn't accept help from friends. He has to learn to do these things. And so there's this really great supporting cast. There's this talking cat robot who steals the show. There's some really phenomenal action sequences, actually. And the design, the animation, of course, is beautiful, but just like the design of everything, the characters, the sets, the weapons, the spaceships, all that stuff. It looks like you're watching you're watching a big budget science fiction epic, and that's because you are. But you can't go into it thinking it's of a Toy Story movie per se, but just go into it thinking of like a cool sci-fi action film with a character that you kind of know. But it's really great. It's really, really good. It is a good film. I had a lot of fun watching it. It really is one of my favorite films of the year, obviously, as the fact it's on my top 10 list. But I think people should definitely give it a chance. I know a lot of people skipped it because they were like, who cares? I don't need this. It's not Toy Story, whatever. Just watch it anyway. I think people will really enjoy it. So Lightyear is my number 5.
I do wonder whether they're having it tied into Toy Story and Buzz Lightyear, whether they harmed it, because I know when it was announced and trailers coming out, the response did seem to be saying, well, why are they doing this? Nobody wants this. Whereas if they just had it as a new sci-fi film of its own.
Right.
Because everybody forgets, they always go, well, it's not going to work. But, Toy Story was a new thing when that first came out. Mm-hmm. All these ones which have lots of sequels going out. There was a film at the beginning, which half the time wasn't planned to have any sequels, but it's just, maybe if they just changed it a bit and just had this sci-fi and advertised it like
Yeah,
that. Maybe would that have worked?
I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree. There are enough things in it, a couple of things that sort of tie into things from the movies that I think you couldn't pull off necessarily.
Okay.
It's hard to. I don't want to spoil anything, but I think I mean, I don't know what have made it more successful, but I think part of what's great about it is the sort of tie into Buzz Lightyear and the things that come about from it. I think there are some neat callbacks that I think people will enjoy. I just think people just had the wrong impression of the movie, maybe, or just sometimes great movies just don't do well at the box office. But I love Lightyear. I talked to lots of other people who saw it, and they said they loved it too. I think people just need to give it a chance, and they'll be won over by it.
Cool. Okay, I will get around to watching it,
Yeah.
especially because after what you've been saying about that, it does sound like my kind of thing. Okay.
Real quick at the halfway point, I just want to say our trend so far has been this. First of all, no overlap yet. Very impressed by that.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
our lists have basically been you're listing movies that I've seen but didn't make my list, and then I'm listing movies that you just haven't seen yet.
I'm seeing it.
The way that we're going so far. I don't know what that means. Maybe I just watch. To be fair, I should tell people this. Last year, I set a goal for myself to watch 365 movies in 365 days. So I set out to watch 365 movies in the calendar year of 2022. Now, not only did I accomplish that goal, but thanks to a bout with COVID to start my year and a bout with COVID to end my year, in which I was quarantined and had nothing to do but watch movies, I watched 410 movies last year, which is a personal record and probably doesn't say a lot for me as a person. But I am married and I have kids. I just stay up late and don't sleep a lot. But I did watch a lot of movies. So I probably, for this year especially, that's probably why I've seen so many more than you, is just because I was like just tearing through movies like they were paper. So anyway, continue on, Phil.
Okay, my number 4 is it's a big, it's over 3-hour film, another big one, and it's basically it's like 4 or 5 different films all put together. It's RRR, so sometimes called Rise, Roar, Revolt. It's the Indian language epic drama directed by S.S. Rajamouli. Apologies again with names. It's a huge. I kept seeing this word of mouth, people online going, "This is amazing, this is great." It popped up on Netflix, and I thought, "Oh, watch this." I don't really. I have seen some Bollywood, or this is a Tollywood film. Again, apologies. I don't mean to cause offense if I get the terms wrong, but it's. I have seen a few, and I never quite get into them. I don't know why, but this one I just thought this was so much fun. It's dealing with some real serious stuff. It's following 2 real-life Indian revolutionaries and their fight against the British Raj. It's very loose with the truth, because I don't think they were friends or even met. I'm not sure if they met each other, but they're basically these 2 guys who are the toughest guys you've ever met, but they're on different sides. One of them is working as a soldier for the British Raj at the beginning, and his scene is just epic, where there's a small outpost surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands of people. This one guy throws a rock from the crowd, which hits one of the officers, and the officers say, "Arrest that man." So this main character guy, he just goes out there and takes on these hundreds of people with a stick to get this one guy, and he manages it. And it's over the top and crazy, but you buy into it so easily. It's just because the way it's done is just brilliant. The British people in it, in the Raj, are proper moustache twirling evil. They do terrible things. I am British, as you probably noticed, but I didn't take offense. I was just going, yeah, they did terrible things. I know that. It's great seeing this comeuppance of things like that. And there's a big dance scene, which is amazing. The song is catchy. They're doing these crazy dances, big smiles and things. I was going, that'd be a great one to learn how to do if a few of you were doing it. There's bits where they jump off a bridge and they're holding. My brain's overloading just thinking about it. There's so many cool scenes and moments in it. The one where one of them can't walk, so he's on the shoulders of the other one, and they're just punching things. There's one bit where one of them picks up a motorcycle and spins it around and throws it at another guy. It's epic. It's huge. If you wanted some fun and some craziness at the cinema or in your own home, watch RRR. It's unlike anything you've seen before. If you haven't watched any of these Bollywood, Hollywood films, it's over the top. It's silly. It's serious. It's heartbreaking. It's dramatic. It's got some Hollywood needs to pay more attention to these kind of films and just give some over the top action like we used to get back in like the 80s and things. Go back to that. It shows you can do some crazy stuff and you'll still buy into it. But it's 3 hours 20 minutes long, but it flies by because it's just so many cool bits. That's RRR.
Okay. So wait, so you're telling me you're British?
Yeah, Mike, I've kept it well hidden.
Man, I feel a little betrayed, Phil. I did not know that. Anyway, so you do not have to predict my opinion because not only have I not seen this movie, I'd never even actually heard of it, or if I have, I don't remember hearing.
Oh, okay, okay.
So, I'm gonna go see if I can track it down because it sounds really cool, and I do like. Much like you, I've watched some Bollywood films. I've had differing opinions of them. I haven't found that one that I'm like, yes, this is so great. So there's one I have on my Netflix queue right now that looks pretty cool, but I'm gonna try and track that one down and see how it is.
Yeah,
So
the two main leads, they're brilliant. They've got so much charisma. They've got one of them's got an amazing mustache, which I was really jealous of. The other one's got a really cool beard, which I was jealous of. For those of you just listening and haven't seen me, I have a beard and mustache anyway, but I was still jealous of their facial hair. There's one great scene as well where one of them's fighting a tiger.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That's cool.
So many. Yeah,
As one
there you go.
All right, very good.
I think it was on Netflix in the UK, so that could be a good place to start looking for it.
I like it. All right, so my number 4 then is a film that stars Spider-Man and somebody who's already appeared on my list, actually. It is Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg in Uncharted, but they should have called it Funcharted. See that I did there? Because it's just so much fun. I absolutely loved Uncharted. It is not a deep movie. It is not an intelligent movie. It is not necessarily a realistic movie, and I don't care a bit because it was the most fun I've had watching a movie in a really long time, until my number 3. But it is just like it's one of the, I know it's based on a video game, doesn't matter, but it's like you take everything about like the Indiana Jones movies, the National Treasure movies, like that kind of film, and you put it into this movie, right? And you make it's real slickly edited and it's got good special effects and all that stuff and hit music and everything, and you get Uncharted. It is so much fun. I don't even know what I can say about it beyond that. Like it's just you watch it with a big grin on your face the whole time. You get sucked into the adventure of it. They have to solve puzzles and pirate ships and all this, stuff and everything. And honestly, I don't think you need to know much about the video games. The only thing that stood out for me was the post-credit sequence, which was clearly for the video game fans, right? That was like, I watched that. I was like, I had to go right onto the internet and be like, I don't get it. What is that about? Everything else about the movie, though, it just felt like I was just watching a movie that happened to be, about these characters. I don't know what it does compared to the video game, but like, just action and adventure and epic and fun and like I said, treasure hunts and bad guys and I really enjoyed the heck out of it. Just big smile the whole time I watched it. Loved it. Can't wait to watch it again. Told my wife, my daughter already watched it because she watches a bunch of stuff on her own. But I told my wife, I'm like, we got to watch this movie because you'll love it. It's just it's just fun. The only word I can use to describe it. If you want to have fun, watch Uncharted. Simple as that.
Okay. Good stuff. I've still yet to see this. I've played the games. I really like the games.
I know they're very popular.
Yeah, I don't know whether that might change. I might have a different opinion of the film because I know it seems to have mixed response from people, but it's definitely one I want to watch, but I've just not got around to seeing it.
Fair enough.
A good pick. Okay, my number 3, top 3 now. Here we go. My number 3 is a sequel, which was really good, and it was so much fun at the cinema. It is Top Gun Maverick.
There you go.
Nice. I've got the Blu-ray holding it up. This is one where the trailer came out. I was going, oh, okay. Yeah, they're going to do a sequel to that. Top Gun was never, I always enjoyed Top Gun. It was never one of my huge favorites, but I always enjoyed it. When they were making this, I was just thinking, it's going to be another one of the ones where they just take an old film, do a sequel, get somebody involved in it, then they're pushed to the side to reintroduce new people, and it's going to be one. I'll wait till it comes out. Then some of the trailers dropped. I was going, wow. You realize they are filming with the actors in planes. You see the G-force on the face. Mm-hmm. And then it just came out and I was going, well, I'll wait till it comes out on Blu-ray. But then so many people on the social media channels were going, this is great. Oh my God, I can't believe how good it is. I was going, that can't be the case. And it was like one Saturday I had some time. So I checked, booked a ticket, and then went and watched it. And I sat down and just was blown away by how good it was. It was a cinematic experience, lots of fun. Very predictable, has the same plot beats as the original film, but it just does so well. Tom Cruise is the star of it, but it's the supporting cast are good. The bits with Val Kilmer are just give you a lump and you're just almost in tears, but he's so good in it as well. I love the fact that Iceman has been looking out for Maverick all these years in between. But it's just some great action sequences again because they're really flying the planes. This time we get beach football. For those of you who like the shirtless beach sport games, Jennifer Connelly's great in it. Tom Cruise, though, it's his film, so it was refreshing to just have him. But it's Tom Cruise film, so you know he's going to be heavily involved in that. But it worked with him as the character. This guy, all he wants to do is fly, but he realizes he's sort of falling behind everything. He's got nothing else in life apart from this, and this film makes him realize there is more to life apart from going really, really fast. But that's my number 3.
Very good choice. All right. My number 3 is almost the exact same movie, really. Very, very similar. It is Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. Now,
I enjoyed that film, but I didn't see it. I'm sorry, I did see it, and I enjoyed it.
Okay, I was going to say, wait, what?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Before people jump on me about this one, first of all, it's the only one that wasn't released theatrically, although I wish it had been. It was a Disney Plus original movie. But here's the thing. I'm not a Rescue Rangers fan, right? When I was growing up, I was actually fairly, teenager, but tween, whatever, when they came out. There was, DuckTales and Rescue Rangers came out at the same time. I was a DuckTales guy, not a Rescue Rangers guy. I probably saw 2 episodes of it in this entire run. I never watched the show at all. So this is not a nostalgia pick, right? I just think it is an incredibly brilliant and an amazingly funny film. You've got John Mulaney and Andy Samberg playing Chip and Dale. And it is basically just rife with in-jokes and cameos from other characters, and not just Disney characters. They got a whole bunch of other characters.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've got a surprisingly good mystery story wrapped up in the whole thing. It gets like weirdly meta at some points. It gets very funny at some points. It's kind of like Everything Everywhere All at Once, but with Chip and Dale almost. Like, not that they go to multiverses, but like they definitely do some crazy, wacky stuff with it. But I actually watched it twice, and I enjoyed it even more the second time around. It's just so funny. Like, the script is phenomenal. Like, the jokes are so on point. They are, I mean, just the way they skewer Hollywood and Disney and these characters and the TV merchandising and all of this stuff. It is just, I think it's brilliant. And again, another one much like Uncharted, where I just watched it. This one I was actually laughing out loud pretty much the whole time. But it is so much fun, and it's funny because I kept asking myself, like, am I really going to put this in my top 3 on my top 10 list of 2022? I enjoyed it so much more than so many other movies. Like it's, is it going to win an Oscar? Is it cinematic genius? No, but man, just in terms of having a good time watching a movie, it's really great. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. I'm still a little getting over. I had COVID right before Christmas, so I got this kind of lingering cough. So I'm not contagious. Not that anybody can catch it through the internet, but that's why I keep coughing here and there. But anyway, so that's my number 3, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. Who knew? Not me, but yeah, I loved it.
I really enjoyed it as well. It was a breath of fresh air. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Probably that had any right to be, but it's almost like a distant sequel to Who Framed Roger Rabbit as well, set in that same universe.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
But I can imagine. I've only seen it the once. I can imagine watching it again would be really good because there were so many jokes in the background, things, lots of billboards and adverts playing.
That's what I found. I caught a lot more of the jokes the second time around. Once you kind of knew what to expect, and you could kind of pick up some of these throwaway lines or background characters or things like the billboards and stuff. And so I caught even more the second time around, and I was hysterical. It was great.
Wasn't there like a Ben Affleck's Batman versus E.T. or something?
Yes,
like that?
Yes, fantastic.
But yeah, lots of jokes. But I enjoyed that. Didn't make my list, but yeah, it's well worth a watch. It probably would have been great. I mean, on the cinema, I think if that had come out in maybe the early 2000s or something, I think that would have been huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my number 2 is one that Mike's already mentioned. It's not Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. It is the Batman.
Very good.
I really enjoyed this. Like you, I knew Robert Pattinson was going to be really good in the role because since the Twilight films, his choice of roles has shown his range. It's huge. I was still surprised when he was announced, I will admit, but he's great as a Bruce Wayne who doesn't realize the benefit of being Bruce Wayne with regards Batman, which I liked as well. Some people seem to miss that, where they just go, he's just sitting in the cave all day, he's emo Batman, and he's emo Bruce Wayne. I'm going, yeah, because we're seeing the growth of Batman realizing that Bruce Wayne is a good mask. He just hasn't realized it yet. I like the whole look of Gotham. As you said, as mentioned as well, that we saw more of the detective elements, which were great. I also like the bits where Batman near the start as well, when he's going into the crime scene, there's all the police around and he's wearing the suit. You can see, I think it's the way Pattinson acts it as well. He's wearing the suit, but you can, I don't want to say micro expressions, but there's little things where you go and he's real. He's going, am I pulling this off?
Right.
You can almost see there's little bits, there's tiny little moments of him going, where he's almost embarrassed by it, but he's sort of going, no, I'm the Batman. Yeah. I want to do this. It's very much, it's not a year. He's been going for a year, hasn't he, in the film, I think.
It's like year 2.
Yeah, 2. Yeah, he's still learning how to be the Batman. I loved it. It's a long film, but I've seen it about 2 or 3 times now, and I've enjoyed it every time. As you said, there's some things that didn't quite work, but it's, on the whole, it was almost like I look at it as well. It's almost like it could have been another story set in Christopher Nolan's Batman film, maybe a sequel after. I think it's the way I look at it in my head canon. It's Batman Begins, the Batman, then I'm going to the Dark Knight. That's the way it seems to fit.
Right.
I loved all the technology used. I loved the Batmobile, especially when it first appears. That screeching sound in the cinema when that started, I was looking over my shoulder going, what the hell is that? Colin Farrell again, an incredible role. If you didn't know Colin Farrell was in it, you'd be going, people now might well be going, what, Colin Farrell was in it? I didn't know that. Right. Well, the Penguin with the makeup was just incredible. Paul Dano was the Riddler's great. Oh, everybody involved is just superb. I just love this, the way it was shot, the way the action scenes took place, the heavy footsteps of the Batman as he's coming out of the shadows.
Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to seeing more films of Robert Pattinson's The Batman. Rumor is it could be Mr. Freeze in the sequel, which would be good.
Oh yeah,
as long as he's as good as Arnold's version. No, don't use that as a reference. But yeah, that's my number 2.
There you go. So the first film of our lists to make it to both of our lists, and maybe the last, maybe not. We'll see. I can't say anything yet, but very good choice. I'm glad. I'm not surprised. I had a feeling it was going to end up higher on your list than on mine. Again, I really liked it. I just found that, honestly, outside of my top 3, which I had locked in pretty early, most of the rest of my choices, I probably could have jumbled the order up and reversed them or whatever, and it would have been. I enjoyed most of the rest of the films pretty equally. They're all great, so. Sometimes it's just where you feel it at the moment,
Yeah, that's. I mean, I was surprised that it was as high as it was to begin with, but then I kept going. But no, I was going, should I lower it? I was going, no, that's where it should be.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, well, my number 2 then is I don't know if it'll be surprising or not. I'm not really sure. I think I've seen what people think about it as kind of the whole, and it seems like there's a fairly prevailing opinion. But my number 2 is Avatar: The Way of Water. I rewatched Avatar before this came out with my daughter because she wanted to see the new one and we wanted to see the first one first. We were all set to go see it like the day, like the second day it was in theaters, and then I got COVID and I had to wait a couple of weeks to go see Avatar. And from what I saw, I tried to avoid it. I didn't see any spoilers or anything, but from most of what I saw online, people were commenting that, oh, Avatar looks beautiful, but it's too long and the story is kind of, meh or whatever. That seemed to be a very, very common opinion that I heard from a lot of people. And I don't know why that wasn't my experience, to be honest with you. But I absolutely loved it. I enjoyed the entire experience. I know it's 3 hours and 12 minutes long. And I really don't think most movies deserve to be 3 hours. And yet there's 2 of them on my list, the Batman and this one. But I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it looks amazing. And duh, right? Like that's not, I'm not making a bold statement here, but honestly, I was blown away by just how immersive James Cameron can make this world and just by how incredible it looks. Like it doesn't just look great. It looks like stunning.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
scene is like stunning. And then, I thought he did good because it's been 13 years since the original. So it's like, okay, these characters have aged. I mean, and they're all CGI. So he could have just had them be the same age, but no, instead they have kids and there's a whole family thing. And there's this, kind of sequel subplot with some returning characters and things like that. And then like, I just, I just really enjoyed it. And there's some things that I liked. I think people don't really pick up on. And again, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but like, for example, in the original movie, it's all about like this technology coming into the forest, right? And these forest people fighting off this technology. And then in this movie, it's kind of like the forest people going to the technology, right? It's like the forest people are fighting on these big technological ships and stuff. And I thought the way that juxtaposition of sort of making it the opposite of the first film was, but like a parallel but opposite, was so incredible to me. And I don't know if, like I said, I'm not saying people didn't pick up on it. I'm not saying people aren't smart or whatever like that. I'm just saying, like, I don't usually think about films that way, but as I was watching, I was like, oh, it's brilliant. He like reversed it and is paralleling. And like, I don't know, I was blown away by it. I thought it was phenomenal. I loved it. I thought the characters were all really good. The new characters were great. I mean, the whale character was great. There's a whale that you're like,
I know.
That's awesome. I was blown away by it. I honestly was. I thought it was phenomenal, and I'm all in on Avatar now. Like the first film, when it first came out, I remember I watched it. I was like, yeah, that was really good, and I didn't watch it again until a couple months ago. It was just never one of those movies I went back to. I think a lot of people kind of had that experience with it, although the box office grosses of the new one sort of clearly say that people want more of this. But now I'm all in. I'm like, yep, I'm an Avatar fan. Give me all those 4 sequels. I'll take them as soon as I can get them. I'm going to rewatch these movies. Like I'm in. Like James Cameron, shocking, I know, he made a good film, but he's been one of my favorite directors since I was, a kid. He remains now. I wish he would make more movies because it makes me nuts that he does one like every 10 years. But he won me over again, and I am just, he's got me now. I'm Avatar. I'm all in. Take my money.
Yeah, I've seen the film. I enjoyed it. Looks stunning. It's basically though, it's the same. All the criticisms I've seen pretty much what the first one had going. It looks amazing. The story's not very good. I felt the story was a bit better in this one. It's a very simple story. It's all about family. I like the fact it's about family though, but it's a simple story, which then means you can just look. I think it's a deliberate choice of having a simple story. So then it's easy to comprehend what's going on. So then you can just bask in the visuals, which are, as you say, totally stunning. There's times where you're going, I know it's CG, I know it's motion capture, or I think it's Cameron calls it, he says performance capture, which is good, but you're still going, well, how did he do it? You see the hands and the wrinkles on the hands and the leather straps they're using, and you're going, where does that start? Where does it end? It's just melded so well. When there are humans involved, you're going, well, you just spend all the time going, what? How do they do this? It does look amazing. It didn't make my list, but it's not the worst movie in the world. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to seeing where the story goes now. I saw an interview with Cameron where he's saying these first 2 films are basically world building, setting up the stage, and he says the story proper hasn't actually started yet, and that's going to be, and you're going,
I know
James.
It sounds like hyperbole or something that like you're like, yeah, fine, sure, I'm sure. But then it's like James Cameron, and you're like, well, he might not be kidding. You know what I mean? Like that might not just be saying it. It's probably true because he's phenomenal.
Minor spoilers ahead for the film. I was surprised to see James Cameron do a film which involved people stuck on a sinking ship.
Yeah, I was a little bit like, wow, he really likes the water stuff because he did The Abyss, he did Titanic, and I did think that there was some echoes of Titanic in there, but there was
a nice little reference to Aliens. I think it even used the same scream that Newt did. There's a bit where somebody gets swept away down a hole, but I thought that was a nice little nod to Aliens. But I also think because of The Abyss and the Titanic and stuff, I think James Cameron obviously does like the water because he has gone down to the Titanic sank. But I think as well he was going, listen, he does these things as well to show the film industry saying, look, you can do this now.
Right.
It's basically said, let's do this because the problems he had filming The Abyss.
Yeah.
Apparently the Blu-ray for The Abyss is coming out this year.
Oh my God, finally.
But I think he probably did it as well to say, listen, we can do this now, and it's a lot more comfortable for the actors.
Right.
but it is stunning. The fact they did use the water could have been a big gamble, but he's done it well, and I am looking forward to seeing the other films, because I wasn't really looking forward to seeing this new film.
Yeah.
Then I went and saw it and went, oh no, I enjoyed that. Let's see what happens next.
You know, I wonder if the reason I liked it more than a lot of other people is because it actually echoes one of my other favorite film series, right? Because it's all about family, or should I say
Family.
family. Yeah.
Family.
It's like the Fast and the Furious, just on a different world. Okay, that's not accurate at all, but there is a heavy
They bring
family
different
focus.
people in. I do think some of the people we've seen are going to end up being. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Anyway. All right. So that was my number 2. All right. Now it comes down to our number 1s. I know they're not going to be the same. Don't ask me how I know. I just know. But I'm very curious to hear what yours is then. So it's not Avatar. I know that. So what do you got, Phil?
My number 1 is one that surprised me at being number 1.
Okay.
Because it's a bleak, depressing film which shows the horrors of war. It is All Quiet on the Western Front.
Ah, okay.
The new version, it's based on the 1929 novel of the same name. It's been adapted for film a few times, but this one is directed by Edward Berger. It's an anti-war film. It's set in the closing days of World War I, following a small group of soldiers in the German army who are all idealistic, thinking we go to war, it's going to be a glorious, amazing thing. But then when they get there, they quickly realize it is not. You do see the horrors of war, but you also see some incredibly beautiful scenes, like the quiet moments where they're just having something to eat and the frost on the trees and around them, where they're going to steal a goose from a farm. They get chased. There are some little moments of levity, not many, but there are some there. But it's just, I watched it with my dad one weekend, because it was, I think it had a limited cinematic release. I wish I'd seen it on the cinema, to be honest. It would look amazing on the big screen. But I sat and watched it with my dad, and we both enjoyed it. I know it's hard. It always seems weird when you enjoy something which does show the horrors of what people really went through.
Right.
But it's done so well. It tells the story. Well, it shows the facts and weaves them into the tale involving these soldiers. You're there with them. It's a bit like it's a good companion, I think, to 1917.
Right.
But it's told from the other side as well. But I enjoyed this more than I did 1917. But yeah, it's probably one of those ones that everybody should watch, because otherwise, if you forget what the history, you're doomed to repeat it and all that. But it's definitely worth checking out. It can be a hard watch, but there are some moments. There's some of the scenes and the scenery. There are some moments of absolutely beautiful cinematography and some amazing performances by all involved. But that's All Quiet on the Western Front, which is probably still on Netflix.
I believe so. All right. Well, I have not seen it, so I cannot comment, except to say that my probably least favorite genre of movie is bleak. It is one of the things that turns me off from a film very quickly. Not saying that that's why I didn't watch it. It's on my list. It is one of those ones where I'm like, oh, this is going to be heavy. And I just like bleak films are really tough for me. So I'll get around to it, but it's certainly, I have to be in the right mindset for it. So
yeah, it's not quite as, I say bleak, because you know what's involved. It's not as bleak as some war movies like Come and See and other ones like that. But it's probably, like I mentioned before with another film, it's probably a bit more accessible than some of those others. It's subtitled, obviously, but it's I do feel it's worth watching. Even it's one of those ones you got to be in the right mood for it, though.
Right. All right.
Okay, here we go. What's your number 1?
My number 1 has already appeared on your list. So just a bit of overlap, but this is one of our most diverse lists, I think.
Yeah,
we've ever had. But and here's the thing: the minute I saw this movie, I knew it was gonna be my number 1 for the year, and it was only halfway through the year when it came out, and I said, that is, unless something comes out that really blows this away, it's gonna be my number 1 film of the year. I watched it 3 times this year, twice in theaters, and I'm not saying I wasn't open to other films taking its place, but nothing even came close. And it is Top Gun: Maverick. Hands down, my favorite movie of the year, probably my favorite movie of the last 10 years. It's not just good. It is not just great. It is stunningly good. Thank you. Yes, I mean that's that thing. That's I wish I should have thought to bring some of mine, but I didn't. But um, it's honestly, to me, it is a perfect movie, and I say that about a handful of films. Not so I'll never say it, but like there is literally not one bad scene in that movie. In a perfect world, I think Tom Cruise should get nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor. I know people are probably like rolling their eyes at it, but hear me out. I think it should get nominated for Best Film because what doesn't it have? That's my question, right? It's an action movie, but it's not an action movie, a traditional one where it's all action the whole time. There's a lot more. It's not really overwhelmingly action-y, right? It's got drama, it's got pathos, it's got humor, it's got a realistically strong storyline about sort of like not quite parenthood, but sort of like living up to other people and trying to repair a relationship, right? Two relationships, really. It has action. It's gorgeously filmed. The cinematography is amazing, right? It's got all the things that are supposed to be what great films are about, that Oscar films are supposed to be about, right? It's got amazing performances. I mean, Tom Cruise's performance, and again, I know people think it's like, oh, it's just Tom Cruise playing Tom Cruise, but if you watch his performance, like really watch it. It's really impressive. The things that he portrays with his face, like when he's looking at Rooster, and there's scenes in between, and when he's talking to Iceman, and all of this stuff. Like it is not just Tom Cruise playing the cocky pilot. Like he is wearing a lot on his face and his body in that performance, and I think it's phenomenal. And I think the movie is just, again, it's an incredible script, right? The dialogue is great. The characters are real and they go through real things. There's real drama in it. There's great action. The cinematography is phenomenal. And like I said, to me, if that's not what the Oscars are about, then why are we doing it? You know what I mean? I know it's not really because they like these, films about sad people and stuff like that. But like this to me represents the pinnacle of great filmmaking, and I'm really thrilled that Joseph Kosinski directed it because he's somebody I've been watching for a while. He did the Tron Legacy, which I absolutely loved. And then he did Oblivion, also with Tom Cruise, which I think is a highly underrated Tom Cruise movie. Then he made Only the Strong, which is a firefighter drama that's pretty good, but it wasn't great. And I was kind of like, is he falling off a little bit? And then bam, Top Gun Maverick, which is just, like I said, I've watched it 3 times already. I'll probably watch it a few more this year. I think it's just perfect. It's a perfect film. And I don't care if people agree with me or not, or if they think I'm overestimating it. You will never convince me that Top Gun Maverick is not a phenomenal movie. And I'm not a Top Gun fanboy. Like I like Top Gun. It's a great 80s film. I enjoyed it when it came out. I've seen it a couple times over the years. It's not one of I don't list it in all my favorite 80s movies like I do things like, Big Trouble in Little China and Aliens and Back to the Future. Like it's not on that level for me. It's like a fun 80s movie. And I watched it again not that long ago after Maverick came out, and I think Maverick is by far the better film. I know that Top Gun itself is more iconic, and it's got, the songs and all that. But I think that as far as actual films go, Maverick, hands down, the better movie. So it's not just, oh, I love Top Gun, and so I love this movie. It blew me away completely.
A good pick. Well, it made both our top 3. So
yes.
Yes. I agree with everything you said. It's a great film. It's got an action. It's got everything. It's a good action film. You just say it's just so good to see with a nice crowded cinema as well.
Yeah, I saw it twice in theaters, and it is like nothing else, man. Those plane fighting scenes in the theater are just like a thing of amazement.
On the edge of your seat when you're watching those.
Absolutely. All right, so that is our top 10 films of 2022. I'm very pleased with our lists, Phil. I like that we only had a couple of overlaps, but I think
really good, nice lists.
Really good. It was a good, strong year for films. Really a great film.
Certainly was.
All right, so I'm going to quickly mention some honorable mentions. I know you got a couple as well. Just real quick, because it's a pretty long episode, but that's okay. It's a special episode, but I don't want to take too much time. I mentioned The Menu. That made my honorable mentions, and Everything Everywhere All at Once was an honorable mention. A couple other movies that I really enjoyed that just didn't fit on the list. The Woman King, really good. Bullet Train, a lot of fun. Really enjoyed that. The Adam Project with Ryan Reynolds, a fun science fiction action comedy. The 355, bunch of like a superstar, international women superstars playing spies and kicking ass. Just a great action film that I was surprised by. And then The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, starring my good friend Nicolas Cage, is a really fun meta thing where he plays himself, and there's a lot of great in jokes about him. It's not a great film. It's a little too long, but it's really fun if you haven't seen it. Just watching him play himself and going through all these things and looking and making jokes about his movies and his career. And there's so many like in references. It's definitely worth at least a watch. So there you go. Those are mine. What about you?
Good stuff. Well, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, yeah, because it's a lot of fun. If you like Nick Cage or
even if you don't,
yeah, you'll like it. Yeah, it's good fun. Worth a watch. Bullet Train, I just enjoyed it. It was very silly, but some good fights, good story, good characters. There were also some 3 horror movies which I quite liked.
Okay,
there was Barbarian, which knows little as possible when you watch it, but it goes to dark places. There was X, Ty West's grainy
not a fan.
riff on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And there was also one, Glorious, directed by Rebecca McKendry, which stars Ryan Quanten and the guy who plays J. Jonah Jameson.
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons, yeah. But it's about a guy who stops in a rest stop in the U.S. and he goes to the toilet there, and there's a glory hole there. And J.K. Simmons' voice comes out of the glory hole, starts talking to him, and it's basically a Lovecraftian horror comedy, mainly all set in this restroom, and it's a bizarre trip of a film, but it's worth checking out. Oh, and I also like the documentary Senior by Robert Downey Jr. and his father, Robert Downey. That's worth checking out. That last one's on Netflix if you want to watch that. But there you go.
All right. Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, now, for those of you guys who are watching and are listening, hopefully you have a whole bunch of stuff now to add to your queues or your DVD or Blu-ray or 4K buying lists. And, maybe you got some thoughts on those films, but hopefully we gave you some things to check out, maybe a few movies. I'm sure most of you seen Top Gun and Avatar, but things like, Fall and the Dirt movie that you mentioned, Something in the Dirt, things like that. Hopefully you guys will discover something new that you'll enjoy as well.
Yeah. And let us know films that you saw that we didn't mention.
Yeah.
Maybe films which you feel need more people to see.
Right. And we can play Phil Predicts Mike's Opinion because I've probably seen it because I watched a lot of movies last year. All right. So before we go, we do want to, again, we skipped our ending for the episode, but we do wanted to share some quick recommendations for you guys just as a little palate cleanser. So Phil, do you want me to go first since you went first on the...
Yeah, you go first on this one.
All right. So this is I have 2 things, but it's really one thing.
Okay.
But it's also 2 things. So first is this book here called Taking Shape, Developing Halloween from Script to Screen.
I saw you mention this.
Yes. So it's absolutely phenomenal. And what it is, so it's an unauthorized book, but it's written the way it's so well written and researched that you wouldn't think it's unauthorized. Here's the thing. It's not just the first movie. It's all of the movies up through the last Halloween, the first of the current trilogy, because it came out in 2020. And basically what it does, though, it's not a making of book per se, although it is, but it's not just like, oh, here's how the films were made. There's some of that stuff too. But what it does is it takes a look at every original treatment for all of the films. And then it looks at like the alternate cuts of the films, and it tells you everything about like what's different. And it even goes into things like, hey, here's the stuff that was in the novel of the movie that wasn't in the movie, right? And here are the scenes that were written but then were taken out. And here are the scenes that were filmed but then deleted. And here is a story treatment that was done for Halloween 6 but then never got used. And so it's all about like kind of the world building of Halloween, and it's a really great critical look at the films, the making of the stories, how they got developed. It tells a lot of great anecdotes, has interviews with a lot of the writers and directors and stuff. It's about 350 pages. I got it for Christmas. I started reading on Christmas Day. I think I finished about 3 days later because I could not put it down. It's like a page turner, right?
Oh,
now,
awesome. That sounds really good.
Here's where it gets better.
Okay.
Taking Shape 2. Okay, now this one I just got yesterday because I love the first one so much. Now, I haven't read that much of this. So what is this one, you ask? Well, this one, okay, explores 24 different Halloween sequel ideas that were developed but never made.
24?
So, 24. And it's not just like, oh, somebody once talked about this. These are like movies that were like treatments were written for them. They were in development. At some point they may not have had a full script, but they had like like a multi-page treatment for it that tells the entire story, and the same format where it goes into them. interviews the filmmakers, and it tells you what all these stories are about. There's things like there was going to be a crossover with Hellraiser. There was going to be a 3D sequel. There was going to be a multiverse, a Halloween multiverse. Like, it tells you about all of these Halloween sequels that were developed and then abandoned. And this one I've only just started a little bit. It's already riveting like the first one was. And this one's just shy of 600 pages because it goes into 24 different films. And I could not be more excited to be reading it. So it's a 2-book set. They are available online. I'm not sure if you can find them in too many bookstores because it's an independent. I mean, it's not an independent. It has a publisher that does like a lot of these film type of making of books, but they're not like, it's not like, Putnam or Gideon or whatever the big publishers are. So you may have to get it online, but man, if you're a Halloween fan, like I'm a diehard. I love every Halloween movie just about, except for the 2 that don't exist, the Rob Zombie ones, although they're included too. If you're a fan of the franchise, I literally cannot recommend these highly enough. So Taking Shape 2, those are my recommendations. And they're relatively affordable for big chunky books. They're actually pretty cheap. Probably because they're more independent, but they're under $30 each. So
well, that first one sounds really good, and the second one sounds like it's one where you're going to read through it going, why didn't they make this one?
yeah, I think it'll be fun. I'm excited. So those are my recommendations. What do you got, Phil?
Okay, I've got 2 books as well. The first one is I'm late to the party on this author, but it's by Brandon Sanderson. It's The Way of Kings, the Stormlight Archive, Book 1. So this is The Way of Kings Part 1 because he writes some big thick books, but it's this one. Wow. I'd heard good things about him. I mean, he's a beast of a writer. He just keeps writing and writing, but I can see why people like him. He's a master storyteller. The world he set up is interesting, incredible, good magic system, great characters, lots of weird names, but the way he writes it, you soon remember what they are when they're brought up. It's so easy to get sucked into it. It's a good read. It's over 500. It's almost 600 pages, the first part 1 of the first book. But it's a page turner. It's been great just getting lost in a fantasy book again. It's been a while since I've done that. Cool. I'm looking forward to reading the rest, but there are a lot of them. This is the Stormlight Archive. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 books in the series, I believe.
Wow.
And it's all part of his Cosmere universe because then there's other ones, but I am so glad I started reading it. I've really enjoyed it. The second one is a graphic novel I was sent by Titan Comics. It's a comic book adaptation of The Man Who Fell to Earth, or an adaptation of the David Bowie film, directed by Nicholas Roeg. It's really well done. Lovely art within. Tells the story extremely well. Probably, if you've watched the film and you weren't quite sure what was going on, this could be a good one. It made me appreciate the film more, I think, reading through it. But even better is the last. It has a couple of pages about how they did, scripted the comic and things, but then at the back, it's got how they made the film with loads of behind the scenes images, which is just, if you're a fan of the film, it's well worth getting just for that.
That's very cool. Yeah, I love stuff like that.
And it's got loads and loads of pictures. I believe it's out now, but it's The Man Who Fell to Earth from Titan Comics. I highly recommend that.
Very good. All right. I like it. Okay. So those are our recommendations. So now you've got some stuff to read in addition to some movies to watch. So hopefully we've given you guys plenty to chew on. But we are past our allotted time, although really that doesn't matter because it's our own show. And lest I forget to remind you, we are the most unpredictable show on the internet. So you thought we were going to go an hour. Surprise! We went an hour and 40 minutes. Bam. But that is going to start to wrap us up. Phil, any parting thoughts on the state of movies 2022 or anything at all?
It was a good year for film in 2022. I hope 2023 is at least half as good. And I look forward to checking out lots of the films. My plan is, like you did last year, I want to try and see 365 films a day if possible. I've already seen 13. Okay. And at the time of recording, we are on, it's the 10th of January. So, no, it's the 11th of January. Sorry, my mistake.
No, it's 10th.
Where are we? 10th. It's the 10th. We started recording at the 10th over here in the UK.
Oh, there you go. Right. Yeah.
I got confused there. Yes, so I'm already ahead of the game.
Nice.
About films. We'll see.
You may come to regret this around October, November. Just telling you, is that?
Yeah.
It's a bit daunting after a while because you sort of start to get like, I have to watch a movie. But I kind of had.
Surprised.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to be surprised if I don't make it, but so far it's good.
Yeah, no, it's a fun challenge to try at least, even if you don't make it. Here's what I'll say though: I have had definitely a bit of like a movie hangover because now it's January 10th and I've watched 2 films so far. I was so like just burning, and even once I hit 365, like I just couldn't stop because I was like, well, how many more can I get in before the end of the year? So now that once January 1st hit, I was like, I'll watch some movies and I'm planning on watching more, but I just like haven't been rushing. I'm like, yeah, 2's good. I'm gonna probably watch another one. There's one I want to see tonight, but yeah, it's so I'll be very curious to see how you do on your journey. But all right, well, that is gonna wrap us up then. This was great. I had a lot of fun, and your list was terrific. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. But yeah, we'll be back in the usual couple of weeks. We'll be back to our regular format with another After the Ending and a top 5 list. But until that time, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for listening. Happy New Year to everybody, a little bit late. And here's to a great 2023 in movies. So, as always, I am Mike Spring.
And I'm Phil Edwards.
And we will see you next time.
After the Ending.